Okay, well with that, looks like it's a couple minutes before 4 o'clock, so let's go ahead and begin. Trying to figure out how to advance my slide here. Okay, good afternoon. I want to welcome you all to the CEQA scoping meeting for the proposed Delta Plan Chapter 4 Program Environmental Impact Report. Thank you for joining us today at our virtual meeting. This is my first scoping meeting done all virtually, so probably a sign of the times. My name is Harriet Ross. I'm the Assistant Planning Director for the Delta Stewardship Council, and I'll be serving as your moderator for today's scoping meeting and facilitating comments and questions. With me today is Jessica Law. She's the Chief Deputy Executive Officer at the Council. We also have Jeff Henderson, the Deputy Executive Officer of Planning. We also have Avery Livengood and Kaylee Griffith, Stewardship Council staff to the project, and Brandon Chapin and Lita Birdie will be helping us facilitate public comments, and they are also with the Council. We also have our consulting team with us. Stantec, we have Jamil Ibrahim and Rena Buck-McLeod, and we also have Kathy McAfee with Environmental Science Associates. So with those brief introductions, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jessica Law to make some welcoming remarks. Jessica?
Thanks, Harriet. Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to just send out a warm welcome to our first fully virtual meeting. As many of you know, we have usually have a webcast option for our public meetings, but this is our first fully virtual scoping meeting. So it's good to see some familiar names on the list, and we look forward to seeing you again in person at some point in the near future. But thank you for your patience while we are online, and we have, as many of you know, we have closed our offices due to COVID-19 to protect public health and safety, but that by no means means that we're not available for public input and feedback, and we're really looking forward to this discussion today and to hearing your questions and your input on this process. Many of you know that this has been a process that has gone on for a few years, and we are excited to be at this point in the project. And look forward to moving forward with you and working with you through the rest of it. So that's it for me. We will be here for the next hour and a half or so. And Harry, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Okay, seems like there's a bit of a lag on the PowerPoint. There we go. Okay. Thank you, Jessica. The agenda for today's meeting is we're going to start off with a short presentation where we will review the purpose of the meeting, provide a brief background of the Delta Stewardship Council and the Delta Plan itself. We'll also be reviewing the proposed Delta Plan Chapter 4 amendment, which is we're also calling the proposed project. We'll be reviewing the CEQA process and the approach to the environmental document. We will then spend the majority of our time today really hearing from all of you on any comments you would like to provide. So again, the purpose of today's meeting is mandated by the California Environmental Quality Act. We'll be providing a background on the Delta Plan and proposed ecosystem amendment. And really, again, we will want to spend the majority of our time to receive public and agency input on the scope and content of the program environmental impact report. So just a couple of housekeeping items before we launch into the presentation itself. I think most of you are probably listening to this scoping meeting through the WebEx platform, and you can hear me through your computer's audio. If you wish to make any comments during this time, during this meeting, you will also have to call our teleconference call number to make any oral comments. And that number is shown on the slide. But just in case, for those that are not on a laptop or computer, that number is 1-877-402-9757, access code 445-0441. So if you do call in, you'll have to turn off the audio on your computer or stop the audio broadcast through WebEx to reduce any sound feedback. So if you want to make comments, you have to call that number. And in addition, please email, text, or call us with your name and number so that when it's your turn to speak, we can unmute you. And our email address for this scoping meeting to make any comments is engage@deltacouncil.ca.gov. And like I said, you could also call or text us at area code 916-798-9817. And when you do, email, call, or text, again, please let us know that you wish to make comments today and the number that you're calling in from so that we know which number to unmute to call upon you when it's your turn. So I also want to be clear that all comments today will become part of the official administrative record and may be available to the public. You may request withholding your contact information when calling in, but you just need to let us know up front. And we will be recording the meeting, and it will be transcribed by a court reporter and will be available on the Delta Stewardship Council website. So with that, and I will repeat this again after the presentation, but with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Henderson of the Council to provide a background of the Council and the proposed project. Jeff?
Thanks, Harriet. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this afternoon to review some of the components of the proposed project for this CEQA scoping meeting, which is the ecosystem amendment to the Delta Plan. As many of you know, the Delta Stewardship Council was formed in 2009 under the Delta Reform Act. And the Council was created to advance the state's co-equal goals for the Delta, namely a more reliable water supply and a healthy and protected ecosystem. And importantly, the Act charged the Council and all of us in California to do that in a manner that protects and enhances the unique cultural, recreational, natural resource, and agricultural values of the Delta as an evolving place. A very important consideration in the context of the co-equal goals. Next slide, please. So the Delta Reform Act required, in addition, that the Council develop an enforceable plan for the Delta to ensure coordinated action at the federal, state, and local levels. And the Council adopted that plan, named the Delta Plan, in May 2013. And from time to time, updates or reviews are made to that plan in response to changing circumstances and conditions. And at this time, the Council is proposing amendments to the Delta Plan due to those changes in circumstances and conditions in the Delta, which we'll describe in a moment from an ecosystem perspective. And the proposed amendment to the Delta Plan is the proposed project for CEQA. And as many of you may know, the Council previously amended the Delta Plan in February 2016 for new performance measures, inputs. Single-year water transfers amendments were completed in September of 2016, and a major set of amendments for performance measures, conveyance, storage, and operations, and the Delta Levy Investment and Risk Reduction Strategy, or DLIS, was completed in April of 2018. The Delta Plan is important because it governs any action in the Delta through 14 regulatory policies and makes 73 recommendations in several key areas. The Council is now preparing a program EIR, Program Environmental Impact Report, for the project. That impact report will address the potential environmental impacts associated with this ecosystem amendment at a program level. And I should note, if you've not yet read the notice of preparation that was released for this project, please do obtain a copy from the Council's website, and the NOP includes explanations that describe the project, the probable environmental impacts, and our process to complete the EIR for the ecosystem amendment. Next slide, please. So the Delta Reform Act charges the Council with furthering California's co-equal goals of providing a more reliable water supply for California and protecting, restoring, and enhancing the Sacramento-San Joaquin River Delta and the Suisun Marsh ecosystem, again, in a manner that protects and enhances the unique characteristics of the Delta as an evolving place. And the Council does this through the Delta Plan. The ecosystem amendment to this plan really reflects a shift that occurred in 2015 from what was known at the time as the Bay Delta Conservation Plan to EcoRestore, which has been a program of the Department of Water Resources to restore several thousand acres of delta habitat in a manner that advances goals of the ecosystem. And Chapter 4 of the Delta Plan really required an update to move from the perspectives offered in the Bay Delta Conservation Program to those of the Eco-Restore objectives, and then to look beyond those objectives toward what's really needed to accomplish several sub-goals of the Reform Act with regard to ecosystem. Next slide, please. So the vision for a restored delta ecosystem that's present in Chapter 4 of the plan was derived from the Delta Reform Act itself, and it was approved by the Council through previous iterations of the Delta Plan, and again in April of 2019. And it's really demonstrated in some ways by the conceptual image that's in the slide present here. And the goal of restoring the delta ecosystem isn't really to return to the sort of 1850s unaltered tidal wetland landscape, but rather to find opportunities to recreate some of the historical conditions that make a little more room in the delta for fish and wildlife while simultaneously balancing that with human land use needs. And the intended outcome is a healthy, thriving, and sustainable ecosystem that's capable of supporting the delta's many competing goals. Next slide. So in Chapter 4 of the Delta Plan, there's the vision for a restored delta ecosystem. And as I mentioned on the previous slide, this is essentially unchanged from the existing version of the Delta Plan. And it's drawn in large part off of key concepts that are expressed in the sub-goals for ecosystem that are a part of the Reform Act itself. And I won't read through each of the individual sub-goals, but it's important to kind of take stock of the range of activities, next slide please, that the Council envisions as part of the future delta ecosystem and the characteristics that are included in that, which again are sourced from the Reform Act itself. Next slide, so we're now on slide 12. I'm going to take a minute here and talk about the organization of the proposed project. In other words, the organization of the ecosystem amendment itself. And the ecosystem amendment is organized around 5 core strategies. And I'll just spend a quick minute on each of these strategies because they're really the core for how the plan is organized. The first core strategy, create more natural functional flows, is really focused on the use of best available science to manage flows to support the needs of native species throughout their life cycle. The strategy describes components of functional flows that mimic portions of a natural hydrograph that are critical for species life cycles. That core strategy discusses the role of the State Water Resources Control Board in setting flow objectives via the Bay Delta Water Quality Control Plan, as well as the Council's role to ensure that covered actions subject to the Delta Plan regulations are consistent with those flow objectives. The second core strategy 2, restore ecosystem function, is something that identifies 5 priority attributes for projects to restore ecosystem function. A new policy is proposed under that core strategy that would require proponents to identify priority attributes that contribute to the ecosystem goals outlined in the previous slides that are associated with a covered action that would then assign that project to an ecosystem restoration tier. Proponents would also be required to disclose social benefits provided by the project. Core strategy 3, protect land for restoration and safeguard against land loss, focuses on addressing challenges that are posed by land subsidence and sea level rise in the Delta. This strategy is organized around 2 objectives, protecting the existing but limited opportunities for tidal marsh restoration, and then also halting and reversing subsidence and considering sea level rise in restoration planning activities. The 4th core strategy, protect native species and reduce the impact of non-native invasive species, seeks to protect native species in the Delta. Non-native invasive species take over physical space, compete for food, alter food webs, modify habitat structure, and prey on native species. So the policies and recommendations in this core strategy are really aimed at minimizing or mitigating the establishment or expansion of habitat conditions for those invasive species. And then lastly, core strategy 5, improve institutional coordination to support implementation of ecosystem protection, restoration, and enhancement. This core strategy seeks to improve coordination among local, state, and federal agencies responsible for protecting, restoring, and enhancing the ecosystem. And the policies and recommendations here support activities such as coordinated funding and coordinated permitting that would advance restoration projects that best support the Reform Act's objectives. So that gives you a sense of the range of strategies that are a part of the proposed project. And I'll now turn it over to Kathy McAfee, who will walk us through our CEQA process and talk a little bit more about the content and context of the program EIR.
Thanks, Jeff. As Harriet mentioned at the beginning, I'm part of the consulting team who are preparing the Ecosystem Amendment Program EIR. And I'm going to cover the CEQA process and where we're at in the process, describe the planning area for the analysis, summarize the approach to be used for assessing impacts, the resource topics to be addressed, and then the next steps and anticipated schedule for completing the program EIR. Next. The proposed project location is defined as a planning area where the actions in response to the ecosystem amendment could take place. The primary planning area, shown here in purple, is defined as the legal boundaries of the Delta and Sassoon Marsh that are defined in the Water Code, Section 85085. The extended planning area includes two components. One is the watershed that contribute flows to the Delta, and those are the areas shown in green, and then areas of California with places of use receiving water from or that is conveyed through the Delta, and those are the areas that are shown in tan. Because the amendments address restoring the Delta ecosystem, it's anticipated that the analysis in the program EIR will
Sorry
focus.
about that.
That's okay. We'll focus on actions that occur in the primary planning area and in the Delta watershed area of the extended planning area. Next. As required by the Delta Reform Act, the Delta Plan is a comprehensive plan designed to guide the actions and projects of federal, state, and local agencies that are related to the Delta and Sassoon Marsh. The Council does not propose to construct or operate any facilities or undertake other specific physical actions following adoption of the proposed amendment that would be subject to analysis in this program EIR. Instead, the program EIR analysis considers potential environmental impacts of general types of activities and potential projects that could be undertaken by other public agencies in response to the proposed amendment. Next. The program EIR will evaluate actions or projects that are considered covered actions. A covered action is a plan, program, or project as defined pursuant to Section 21065 of the Public Resource Code. And it is an action that will occur in whole or in part within the boundaries of the Delta or Sassoon Marsh. For covered actions to be undertaken in response to the proposed amendment, lead agencies are required to implement all applicable feasible mitigation measures adopted and incorporated into the Delta Plan or equally effective measures. As a broad programmatic analysis, environmental impacts will generally be described as reasonably expected types of impacts because the details of potential covered actions, such as project size, the configuration, the location, the operation, those are not known at this time. Therefore, the impact-specific covered actions will be subject to that are subject to the proposed amendment will be fully evaluated in project-level documents under CEQA undertaken by lead agencies who propose those projects at the time they are proposed. The later activities that are consistent with the proposed amendment and evaluation in this program EIR may rely on the environmental analysis and mitigation in this program EIR in part or in whole allowing for a more streamlined, efficient CEQA process at the stage of specific project approval. Next slide. For the purpose of the analysis, there are a wide range of types of ecosystem projects that will be assumed to be potentially undertaken, including projects that would modify flows, restore natural communities, including but not limited to wetland, upland, or riparian habitat, include subsidence reversal activities. Next. Protect native species and reduce impacts attributed to non-native species. Improve hydraulic surface water connectivity and increase the frequency of seasonal inundation, including stream diversion and fish passage facilities. A more detailed summary of the range of activities will be presented in the program EIR. The types of activities to be identified are not intended to be an exhaustive list, but instead a representation of the possible activities or projects that will allow the potential range of environmental impacts to be bracketed. Next. Due to the wide range of potential activities that could be undertaken in response to the proposed amendments, anticipated that significant effects could occur in the following resource topics. Additional information about anticipated significant effects to be evaluated in the program EIR is provided in the notice of preparation. Next. So what are the next steps in the CEQA process? The Council will consider all the comments received on the NOP and during today's scoping meeting in preparation of the EIR. That draft program EIR will be circulated for public and agency review. Written responses to comments received on the draft program EIR will be prepared, and that final program EIR will include those responses to comments, any text changes to the draft program EIR, and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program. The Council will consider certifying the program EIR as adequate under CEQA, and following that action, will consider approving the proposed ecosystem amendment. Next. So these are the major CEQA milestones, along with the tentative schedule for each. Right now, we are in the scoping period, and that will go through July 10th, 2020. Your scoping comments will inform the scope of the discussion in the draft program EIR, and we anticipate that draft program EIR will be released in the spring of 2021, at which point the public will have an additional opportunity to review and to comment on the content of the draft. The final program EIR will contain responses to comments received on the draft program EIR and expected to be released in the summer or fall of 2021. Also in the fall of 2021, the Council expects to make the decision on approval of the ecosystem amendment. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Harriet.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. Okay, so we just went through a lot of information in a relatively short time. So please feel free to refer to the notice of preparation itself for any additional information and detail on the project, potential impacts to be evaluated, and the CEQA process itself. And the NOP is posted at the Delta Stewardship Council website. Also, this meeting is being recorded, so you can go back and listen to any part of the meeting you wish to at a later date. So we're now going to begin the oral comment period. We're here to listen and make note of your input for helping us determine the scope of the draft EIR. And we do appreciate your understanding that we don't know the environmental impacts at this point. Again, as a reminder, all comments, including names, will become part of the administrative record and may be available to the public. So commenters may request that the Council withhold any of your contact information from public disclosure, which will be honored to the extent allowable under California law. And for the Council to consider withholding that contact information, the request must be stated prominently at the beginning of the submitted comments. So again, we're here to listen and record your input about the scope and content of the program EIR today. We will call on you in the order that the speaker requests are received. And when we do call on you, we'll unmute your line. Please state your name and organization that you're with. Please also limit your comments to about 3 minutes to ensure that everyone who wishes to speak does have the opportunity to do so. And again, all comments received will be taken into consideration in preparing the draft EIR. And before we begin, I just also wanted to remind folks that we are accepting written comments over regular mail or over email by July 10th. Regular mail has to be postmarked by July 10th, and emails have to be received by 5 p.m. on July 10th. For those of you that don't have access to a computer, the hard copy comment letters can go to 980 9th Street, Suite 1500. That's in Sacramento, California, 95814, and those are the Delta Stewardship Council offices. For email, that email address is ecosystemamendment@deltacouncil.ca.gov. And for more information on the project, should you ever wish to read more about it, please visit the Delta Stewardship Council website itself under Delta Plan, under Amendments. There's a lot more information. And you can always email or write us a letter, address it to the council offices, and email ecosystemamendment@deltacouncil.ca.gov to be added to the list of information we do email blast on major milestones of our project. Okay, so I know this is a little bit redundant again, but I want to be clear for those of you that want to make comments, you have to call into the teleconference number in addition to being on the WebEx. Again, the number is 1-887-402-9757, and that access code is 4450441. And you have to follow up joining on the teleconference by either emailing us or calling and texting to let us know that you want to speak. And our email address is engage@deltacouncil.ca.gov, or call or text us at 916-798-9817. And again, all comments will become a part of the administrative record and may be available to the public. So let's see, with that, Brandon, can you provide us with an initial list of commenters?
Yes, we right now have one commenter. We have Brandon Dawson, and I will go ahead and unmute him.
Okay, great.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, hi. Sorry. Brandon Dawson on behalf of Sierra from California. Appreciate the opportunity to comment today. We believe that the plan amendment programmatic EIR should diligently and thoughtfully consider ecosystem impacts resulting from the operation of different projects that propose to export water from, transfer water through, or use water in the Delta, and projects that don't adequately show how doing so will comport to the state policy of reducing reliance on the Delta. Some of these projects also have impacts that alter Delta flows, and they also impact how Delta flows are maintained, and that have been subject historically to the Bay Delta Plan flow objectives that are both within the Delta Plan, but also within the State Water Board Resources Bay Delta Water Quality Control Plan. And then we also asked that the drafting of the programmatic EIR use the best available science as dictated by the necessary amounts of water, but also ecosystem restoration projects that the Water Board has been using over the past couple of years to dictate how much flows is necessary to sustain the region. So that's all we have today. Thank you.
Thank you. And Brandon, are there any other speakers at this point?
At this point, no.
Oh, okay. Well, we're here till 5:30, so anybody that wishes to speak, this is a good time.
Harriet, maybe we can give about maybe 5 minutes to let everyone send in, then we can start another list of anyone we get.
Yeah. So kind of put it on hold until for 5 minutes.
Yes.
So can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Hi, this is Doug Brown, Douglas Environmental. I was hoping to provide a comment.
Okay.
Mainly because I was
Sure, go
feeling
ahead.
bad that no one else was commenting. So I thought I got to keep this going a little bit. So just a quick one. Just in looking at the NOP and what Kath talked about as far as the types of projects that could occur, it seemed like the types of projects you're evaluating are primarily habitat improvement projects. Those are the covered actions about wetland and riparian habitat improvements. There is some discussion about new infrastructure improvements, but it's connected with screening, diversions, and improvement to fish passage. So I'm curious if you will be looking at any projects, infrastructure projects, levee repair projects that don't include ecosystem components, because they may be just limited to, say, repairs of a levee failure or something along those lines. Will you be evaluating any of those types of projects, anything that isn't ecosystem focused in the EIR analysis?
Jeff, is that something that you can answer? Or Kathy, should I go back to the list of the potential projects you're looking at?
Well, I think, the list of projects that's just an example of particular types of projects. So as we go through and assess the nature of the amendments, the objectives of the amendments, that's when we will have a more detailed list of types of activities.
I guess
so at this point,
yeah, go ahead.
And Doug, what I would say, is if you have anything in mind or thoughts, just if you want to provide a comment on the content for the draft EIR and submit that would be great.
I'm assuming I'm doing that now, but what I would say is just my sense is that covered actions can cover a pretty broad spectrum of activities that could occur within the Delta, and that there should be some analysis of that broad spectrum. Right now, the impression I'm getting from the NOP is that it's just focused on restoration or stressor removal or habitat enhancement type projects.
Yeah, I think as Kathy has indicated, we haven't come up with all of the project types that will be analyzed at the EIR at this point. So definitely your comment is a good one, and we'll have to look into it, whether we would consider other types of infrastructure projects with no ecosystem improvement component on it. We'd have to do a little bit of thinking about that, but we've got your comment here.
And I guess I would, just to get clarity, is the analysis intended to address the policies of the ecosystem chapter, or is it intended to address covered actions and how the change in the ecosystem chapter affects those covered actions? I'm trying to get my head around what the EIR is going to be actually assessing. And if you can't answer that, I understand. I'm just throwing that out.
Harriet, I think, sorry, I'll try. It's the EIR is going to evaluate at a program level potential actions or projects to be undertaken by others in response to the proposed amendment. I know that may not be a very gratifying response, but I think if you haven't done so already, if you look at the previous amendments, the program EIR that Jeff mentioned, on the previous set of amendments, you will get hopefully it'll help clarify the nature and the approach to the analysis that is also going to be the one used for this program, EIR.
Okay, I'll do that. So it sounds like it's just people proposing covered actions that in response to the changes to the ecosystem chapter that you will be evaluating in the draft EIR. So maybe not covered actions that are not responding to those ecosystem chapter changes.
Not necessarily. So where those ecosystem policies would be triggered under certain types of covered actions would be analyzed. And so what we've come up with is a generalized list of types of projects for which the EIR that could occur and would be applicable to these ecosystem policies that would be analyzed in the EIR. And that's what we're looking at right now. We haven't fully defined that list, but we do have an initial list that we're starting with, which Kathy went over today.
Okay. I guess that's where I get confused, and that will be my comment, is that it's unclear exactly. I would think most projects that are covered actions would trigger those regulations or would be subject to the changed policies in the ecosystem chapter. So it would be most, if not all, covered actions that would be affected and should be evaluated in the draft EIR. But I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Harriet, we have another comment, if you're ready.
Okay. Yep.
We have Rachel Wigington with EDC.
Okay. Hi, Rachel.
Hello. Thank you all for organizing this and for the presentation. This is really useful and interesting. I had, I think, two questions rather than comments, so maybe it could just be a point of clarification. So my first question was about the planning horizon, the PEIR that goes to 2050, and there's a little bit of justification in the document about why that planning horizon was chosen as opposed to maybe a longer term planning horizon. So I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about that reasoning. And then additionally, I'm interested in the planning area that's shown in the PEIR, and I know that there's this green section of the map that is the Delta watershed and then the areas that are receiving Delta water for use. But I was curious if there had been consideration of impacts beyond the Sassoon Marsh, so coming into the bay of potential ecosystem projects in the Delta and Sassoon that would be related to this amendment. That's it.
Kathy,
thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Kathy, Jeff, can you shed a little bit of light on the selection of the planning horizon 2050 and why that was selected and not something further out?
Yeah, I'm going to ask Jeff to take that one, and then I can take the planning area question.
Okay, my understanding of the 2050 timeline is, as it stated, I think in the NOP, that's the alignment of the completion date of a number of infrastructure projects that were envisioned at the time of the Reform Act adoption and the formulation, therefore, of the Delta Plan. And so while the Delta Plan looks ahead to 2100, in a large way, we look ahead toward 2100 as the ultimate planning horizon. The effects of the proposed types of covered actions that could occur are going to be much more understood in the nearer term toward 2050. And that also aligns with those infrastructure projects that were outlined in the Reform Act or anticipated to occur as part of the Reform Act, many of which were underway at the point in time the Reform Act was drafted, and that aligns to the 2050 timeframe.
Yeah, and I should point out with these long-term plans, such as the Delta Plan itself, it's typical to look out at a to a 25 to 30 year planning horizon, it's much less common to look beyond that, just simply because, you know, it becomes much more speculative and a lot less detail is known, you know, past a horizon that far away. So 2050 is what we're looking at. Okay, and then Kathy, I pulled up the map here so everyone can see it. Maybe that'll help facilitate the answer to that.
Yeah, I think what I will say in response to this question is what we have here is the total planning area, and the purple, the primary planning area, that does represent the legal limit, so to speak, of the delta, that which is to be addressed as part of the, delta plan. And then the extended planning area does, in fact, kind of, if you look at the tan, it does kind of move over into the bay. In thinking through right now the nature of the types of projects or activities that may be undertaken, we were thinking it might be that it is really the Delta watershed area and the primary planning area that are going to be where these activities occur. However, as we get through the analysis, we may find that we need to expand that planning area into more. So I think as we move through the analysis and we start seeing what the types of, refine the projects, the types of impacts we will be open to expanding the planning area. So hopefully that answers your question.
This is Rachel. Those were both very clarifying answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brandon, do we have any other commenters at this point?
At this point, we do not.
Okay. Well, this meeting is going to go until 5:30. I know sometimes folks join towards the end to provide their comments. So we're going to stay on the line. We'll essentially suspend the comment period until someone else decides or indicates that they want to speak. So we're just going to sit here in silence. So again, in the meantime, if anybody else has any other questions, please let us know, or any other comments to make on the scope of the EIR. We are happy to listen to them. But otherwise, I'm going to suspend that comment period until someone else indicates they want to speak. But we will be here till 5:30.
I was wondering if I could make one more comment.
Sure.
So this is Doug Brown.
Doug?
Yeah, Douglas Environmental. Do you envision that the project that you'll be evaluating will be able to be, so if you look at say there's a covered action, a sort of a generic covered action, and you evaluate the potential impacts associated with that covered action, will this EIR, do you think, provide sufficient analysis of that action that it would minimize future CEQA requirements for implementation of that action, such as if you had a restoration project and you evaluated the effects of a restoration project and how that relates to the ecosystem chapter changes, that you could come in later without doing subsequent environmental analysis, CEQA analysis?
I think, yes, please.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so as we said when I was going through on slide 16, and I don't know whether you want to go back there, it may not be necessary. The nature of this analysis is programmatic because we don't know all the details of projects that are going to be proposed by others. It's not, the council in and of itself is not proposing to do anything. Their project is the amendment, and it will be other lead agencies' response to developing projects under this amendment that is the subject of the analysis, but we don't have all the details. We don't know. It could be a broad range. So there will be this requirement for subsequent environmental review. However, the goal is to provide an analysis at a program level that really does bracket those impacts, that has the mitigation strategies that these lead agencies can use, and with the goal of any subsequent environmental review that they have to undertake could be more streamlined. Does that answer your question, Doug?
That does, and that's what I thought was the intent. With the understanding that with the program analysis, it's tough to nail down details associated with projects, but that's what I was thinking was the case. So
okay, great.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see. It looks like our chair of the Delta Stewardship Council, Susan Tatayan, is on the line. Just wanted to recognize that she's joining us today. Susan, did you have anything you wanted to say? Maybe she's on mute. Okay, well, hearing none, then like I said, I'm going to go ahead and put this comment period on hold. We will be here till 5:30 till the end. So please, if someone's joining in late and wish to speak, please let us know. Okay, well, we just have a few minutes left. So I think since we have not received any more speakers, I think we're going to go ahead and close the comment period for today's scoping meeting. Again, this does not represent the only time you can let us know your thoughts on scoping for the program EIR. After today, you are welcome to, via regular mail, send us your comments. Just has to be postmarked by July 10th, the end of our comment period, as well as emailing us at ecosystemamendment@deltacouncil.ca.gov. Again, that has to be received by 5 p.m. on July 10th. And as we mentioned, we are recording this entire scoping meeting, even the silent parts, and we'll be posting that on the council website sometime next week, so you can always go back and listen to it again. And as I mentioned before, take a look at the notice of preparation itself for more detail on the project and the CEQA project. So with that, I thank you all for joining us today virtually. So thanks again. Have a good day. Thank you.